Hi guys. So some of you have been struggling a little bit with completing the Green Thumbs assignments, and so I thought I'd try to make it easier for you by just posting a daily video of me narrating the bell ringer and then pausing the video, or well, you guys can pause the video after I introduce the bell ringer, complete your bell ringer in your assignment tab, then unpause the video and I will explain the direct instruction slides in that portion, play the video right here for you, and then you can go ahead and respond after that. So it'll all be sort of in one place. So with that said, let's get started here with day 4. This is Friday, March 20th, and this is your bell ringer. What are the 3 types of bees in a hive, and what does each type of bees do for the hive? So pause your video now and do the bell ringer and then unpause it and we'll continue. Okay, hopefully you have unpaused your video now and you're ready to go through the next section. So far we've learned a little bit about what flow hives are and how they're different from a traditional Langstroth hive. And we've also learned about the 3 different types of bees and a little bit about the history of the evolution of bees and how they co-evolved with flowers. And now it's time to start looking at the hive itself. And the hive is what we call a superorganism. A superorganism is an organism that is made up of many other organisms. For example, in our hive, there might be 50,000 bees inside of there, and each one works independently, but ultimately in the service of this larger organism known as the hive. One bee could not survive and complete its life cycle on its own. They must live collectively in a honeybee hive. So without the superstructure, without the superorganism, an individual bee cannot survive. There is division of labor, as we talked about. It's the queen's job to lay eggs. It's the worker's job to care for the young, defend the hive, go out and get resources like nectar and pollen, keep things clean, do maintenance. And it is the drones or the male's job to fertilize the queen when they go on their mating flights. And separating those jobs to different types of bees within the superstructure, that division of labor is one characteristic of a superorganism. Ants do the same thing, for example, or similar things. There's multi-generational living all within the superorganism. That means there are elderly bees, there are middle-aged bees, and there are baby bees. Baby bees, the idea of that's kind of cute. But they're all living together, and we don't often see that outside of these superorganisms. The young are cared for cooperatively. There's lots of different reproductive strategies in nature. Fish, for example, will lay a clutch of 10,000 salmon eggs or something, and then they're just sort of left on their own after they're fertilized, and hopefully 1 or 2 of them out of the 10,000 will survive. That's sort of a low maintenance strategy where you produce a ton of offspring and then essentially just leave them to fend for themselves. And it's very successful. A different strategy would be like chimpanzees, for example. They might have 1 or 2 offspring, and then they carefully guard and care for their offspring and protect them and feed them and nurture them because they only have that 1 offspring or 2 offspring. They have to be very vigilant and protective as parents to make sure that since they only have 1 or 2, a few will survive. Well, bees are kind of in the middle ground, right? The queen will lay 1,000,000 eggs over the course of her lifetime, but it's not just her. She has a whole army of worker bees to look after them, to bring them the nutrients that they need and protect them from pests and invaders and pathogens. And it's a team effort is what I'm saying in the hive. And that's what allows the superorganism to thrive one generation to next. Now, once the superorganism reaches a certain size and there's no more space inside the hive, the queen will sense this and she will begin the process of the swarm, which is kind of an awesome term if you ask me. The swarm is when the superorganism reproduces or makes a copy of itself. And to do this, the queen, the old queen, will take many workers of various ages and she will pull them from the nest, and together they will fly off in search of a new home. When they find a new place where they want to build a new hive, they will, begin the work of constructing their combs and just living their life elsewhere. Now, meanwhile, back at the old hive, the bees will realize after a few days that they've lost their queen and many of their workers. And so the workers that are left will begin to create these. And do you remember what these are called? Those queen cells. They're special cells that are vertical in the comb, and they're a little bit larger, and they will, they might make 5 or 6 or 7 of these new queens by giving these developing larvae the royal jelly and not tapering them off the royal jelly. They'll just keep bringing them royal jelly. They won't give them the bee bread made out of the pollen. They'll continue to get that high nutrient, calorically dense food, and that, as well as the fact that they don't get bee bread and not being exposed to the queen's pheromones, will result in them developing into queens. And a hive can't have 5 queens, so it's kind of, nature is both brutal and beautiful. One queen has to rule the roost, so to speak. And so whichever queen is strongest will kill all the other developing queens, and whichever queen is left, sort of the last woman standing scenario, will become queen of the hive. And then the other bees will work to protect their new queen. And she will leave on her mating flight. She will be inseminated from many of the other drones, and she'll return and begin to lay those clutches and clutches of eggs to sort of repopulate the superorganism. So that is superorganism and the swarm and sort of the life cycle of the hive itself. Hopefully we'll get to see that with our own hive eventually. So your assignment is to write a paragraph that describes what you learned today about the superorganism and about the swarm and about the life cycle of a beehive. Please email me your paragraph tonight by 9 p.m. And I hope you guys have a great weekend. Enjoy the rest of your day.